speaking of lists, you played Callisto Protocol.
I did play Callisto Protocol.
Not once, but twice.
I have.
And then bought the season pass.
Okay, yes, that is correct. Nothing you have said is false, but I think it's misleading. I don't really like this game. Okay, so we were originally planning on playing Callisto Protocol together separately, in our separate homes, to have a shared experience, because we were both looking forward to it when it was announced and watching all of the gameplay come out and whatever. We both really liked Dead Space. It was exciting to see something like Dead Space.
Made by the Dead Space guy.
The Dead Space guy. And then it got not a great reception. And then we pushed it off a little bit, and then we waited, and then, being the intelligent gentleman that we are, purchased it on a sale for like $20 off. Great sale.
I think it was like $30 we got.
Something like that. And then every week following that, I saw it on sale for cheaper, and now it has officially hit the $20 rack at Walmart, despite the fact that it came out less than 6 months ago.
Yep.
So, yeah. Okay. So it's developed by Striking Distance Studios originally. This was originally designed to be a side game to PUBG.
What?
Yeah. It's nutty.
How?
I know. And I think that one decision kind of explains a lot of the stuff about the game. Sort of. It was originally designed to be like a side game in the PUBG universe, and then only maybe about 9 months ago, they officially announced it was no longer in that continuity and it had nothing to do with it. And I think that left the story team scrambling.
That hurts my head.
Yeah. PUBG is very complicated and bad, and mostly just bad and old. But, so, long story short, in 2320, Jacob Lee and Max Barrow are contract freight transporters working for the United Jupiter Company, UJC. The two decided to retire upon ferrying one last shipment between Europa and the UJC operating Black Iron Prison on Callisto, which is one of Jupiter's many, many moons. Shortly after leaving Black Iron in their ship, the Charon, they are boarded by the Outer Way, a terrorist organization, in big quotations. They crash land. They are shoved in the prison facility.
Didn't seem like that big of quotations. I've seen bigger.
You've seen bigger, have you?
I've seen bigger quotations.
Yeah. So, Max dies during the impact, and then Jacob and the leader of the Outer Way are thrown into the prison with no, trial, nothing. And they're all, why the fuck are we here? I was just working on a ship. What the fuck's going on? And then he wakes up, and the prison's fucking falling to shit. The place is on fire. Everything's breaking down. The prisoners are running amok. They're getting infected with some weird goopy virus bug thing. And then Jacob teams up with another inmate.
That guy.
Elias. The fact that I didn't remember his name should tell you a lot about his character. He is British. That is his defining character trait. He is British and says funny British words. Yeah. Mate. He teams up with another inmate. They try to escape. Partly through their escape, as shenanigans ensue, they bump into Danny, the leader of the Outer Way. They have to team up with her to escape. Elias dies. They uncover the mystery of what the fuck is going on. And then the game ends very abruptly. So, Jacob, you are
exactly halfway through. I've done 8 levels.
Okay.
And it's surprising how long the levels are. It takes like more than an hour to play a level.
Okay, so a lot of the... Okay.
Don't worry about spoilers. Just give it to me straight.
Okay, so narrative speaking. This game is nearly identical to Dead Space.
Yeah.
The parallels were intentional, and a lot of them are unavoidable for the sake of comparison, which is simultaneously the game's biggest and least biggest problem. On the one hand, it has shorthand that Dead Space players are used to. There's, a vibe that we're, prepared for. We're hungry, so like we're willing to overlook some things. You already have a plot outline, and you can basically just switch all the names around and call it a day. That's mostly what they did, and that is where it's kind of fucking suck, story-wise. Spoilers. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, but just, they're aliens. Who could have thought about it? They're aliens.
Holy cow.
The long and short of it, you discover this throughout the plot. Originally, it's a mining colony underneath where the prison is now. So you end up going underground, you find out there's a mining colony, they mined into the moon, they found this big old alien fucking weird thing that had a bunch of little spermies. The little spermies started infecting people, everyone got sick, and then they basically just bombed the shit out of it.
I saw an X-Files episode like this one time.
Yeah, basically. They bombed the shit out of it, and then they planted a prison over top of it so they could use the infection of the weird spermies they could experiment on prisoners, basically. A lot of the plot doesn't entirely make sense on a timeline level. It's very hazy on how everything works. There's a secret organization that is at play behind the scenes of the prison. The prison exists to fund and provide bodies for research, basically, which you could have been told from the beginning of the fucking first trailer is like, wow, this prison seems very sussy. Duh. The seeds are not even planted. When I say the fact that the twist is that there's a big secret organization that the head of the prison works for is like offhandedly mentioned twice, because there's two like secret layers you can find underground that don't directly imply anything other than some of the prisoners or the employees knew about stuff. There's parts of this story I want to like, and there's some of it I do like, no strings attached to it, but for the most part it is sloppy. It's very fucking sloppy. Almost everything is just a copy paste of Dead Space. They change the names and they change how a couple of things work. All of the characters are very flat. The biggest thing, which we're going to get into in a couple of months when we actually go over Dead Space and the remake, and I'm going to go over Dead Space 2 and 3 eventually. Isaac in the first game is a silent protagonist for a reason that's explained at the end of the game, but for the entirety of the game he is just you, the player. And Jacob Lee is not like Isaac. He is exactly what you'd expect, a gruff, ready to tumble, working blue collar man, and that's his whole personality.
He says the fuck word.
He does say the fuck word. They all say the fuck word a lot. There is a big twist about his character that's revealed almost the entire way through the story, which recontextualizes everything and is actually a way more interesting story, but there is zero effort put into making it believable. Long story short,
the British guy is actually Jacob's dad.
No. Oh. Basically, the last shipment of, it's at the beginning of the game story, it's like, wow, look at this weird attack happening on this random colony that we see on the news. Oh, it's the terrorist org. They're doing weird shit, and it's being covered up and blah, blah, blah. They delivered the virus, is the big twist. And the game has the tiniest of hints of like, he knows but he doesn't know, like it's like a half repressed, like just do the job, don't ask questions type shit. And I think if they had planned that either from the beginning or had actually put effort into the story being about guilt and wanting to make up for doing a dumb thing and being a cog in the machine without giving two shits about it, that's really fucking interesting. And there's no interest in actually telling that story outside of the beginning, the big twist, And then basically the lead in for the DLC is
I like it when your eyes pop out like that. It's funny.
Dude, I was sitting there and I saw the twist coming and I was like, oh, that could have actually been really fucking cool. But the only reason you as the player would guess that information is because it's a trope and you've played games before, not because it's planted or an idea you have. The only effective scares in the game that are not just jump scare, like the only like effective scares are about him feeling guilty for Max dying in the crash. There's a couple of, as Jacob really liked to tell me right off the bat, there's a bunch of little secret little Jacob whispers in the game that are actually really good. They never do it again after the first,
which is good because I really hated those, especially because it was coming out of my PlayStation controller.
That's so funny.
Not okay.
Absolutely tripping balls. There's a couple of actually halfway decent things used. He sees apparitions of Max, who when he dies, his face gets all fucked up and like his teeth are near his eyes. Looks really cool. There's a couple of really shitty jump scares. He crawls out from underneath the bed.
A lot of shitty jump scares.
Yes, but there are a couple of ones, especially at the end of the game, where he starts seeing Max and then they like have a conversation and he's like, blah blah blah, you need to take responsibility for what we did. Like there's a couple of things that are pretty solid on the writing department. But dude, nothing is explored until about 60-70% of the way through the game. The beginning throws you into the thick of it and you're going, what the fuck? And then you just get plot developments and like new gameplay mechanics. You don't get any real information on what the hell's going on, who the people are, what they mean, despite
why is this tea drinker talking to me all the time,
despite the fact,
what is he even saying? I don't understand his words.
True. Despite the fact that the cast of the game is really small. There's less than 10 characters like in total that are named outside of audio log characters, but somehow they don't explore any of it. They don't explore the world building implications, which is the thing about Dead Space that I really appreciate. Outside of it being a phenomenal game with really good scares in it, the world building was done so organically with the audio logs, with the plot information, with how the plot tied into the secrets, how you could infer a lot of stuff. Not because they were tropes, but because the game actually planted seeds for them. And after replaying it, it's all really fucking obvious now. But especially at the time, it was really, really good at doing that. And this game does none of that on the effort side when it comes to engaging with its ideas.
Back on the shitty jump scares, there was one last night where it got me the first time. You just walk through a door and suddenly there was a guy in the corner that grabs you. But after he killed me and I had to do it again, I entered the door sideways and he wasn't there until a really, really bad animation dropped him in and grabbed me anyway. And I was like, ugh, this game.
So, my biggest... I'm going to get into the gameplay in a minute. My biggest mental disappointment is the lack of effort put into the story, because the motion capture performances and the vocal work from the leads are pretty good. The facial captures are really good. I have a big thing for what's her name? Karen Fukuhara, I believe is her name. The woman who plays Danny, the lead of the head of the Outer Way terrorist organization, in big quotations. It's just none of them are explored. While I was playing the game, I was thinking of ways that they could have tweaked the characters and condensed them to make it make more sense. Sam Witwer plays the evil head guard who only appears at the beginning and the end of the game, but is basically lined up to be your rival, I guess. It's very stupid. It makes my head hurt, because a lot of that stuff is not, I wouldn't say it's not hard. I can't make a game, but it's been done so many times, and the fact that they copied over so much material from Dead Space and then just changed the names on it, the fact that they couldn't do that, I think really, really fucking blows from a development standpoint. Gameplay wise, it's fine. Okay, so here's the deal. So it's a combination of melee combat, which is rhythm-based fucking dodging and blocking combat. It's super weird. Basically, you hold the left stick to the left or to the right to dodge an enemy's attack, or you hold it backwards to block, which took me about 5 hours to figure out. And you have to, dodge enemy attacks, wait for an opening, and then you use the right trigger, or what, L3 or whatever. That's L2 on PlayStation. R2 on PlayStation retards. You use the trigger R2. To, use your melee weapon to go whack, whack, whack.
No. Whack!
Yeah, okay.
It takes 30 seconds to do it.
Okay, you're right. And then as the game progresses, you get a couple more expressions of that. The bumper above that trigger is used for a heavy attack, which does about the same amount of damage, but does more knockback, so they get knocked over, or they get, fallen on their ass. It's also good for crowd control. If you have a few enemies, you can hit them all at the same time, usually. That's about it on the physical combat. And for a game that is 50-50 melee combat and shooting, it's someone, I'm pretty confident it was The Completionist, a YouTube channel I really like. He described it as Dead Space. I'm gonna keep saying that. Dead Space plus Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, like a fighting game, because it's really weird. There is no timing to the attacks. It's as long as you're holding the stick in the right direction, you'll dodge the thing, which at first really pissed me off because it seems extremely lazy, but as the game goes on, trust me, you're gonna thank it for that. It makes it a lot easier to get used to. The biggest problem with the melee combat isn't that it's shallow, for me anyways, after playing the game through twice. The problem isn't that the melee is really shallow and clunky, it's the fact that the game is not made for more than one enemy on screen. Because if you are fighting more than one, maybe two enemies at a time, the combat falls apart. When it's just one normal enemy, one of the base enemy types, you get pretty used to it. A couple of them have really recognizable attack patterns based on their how they look, the enemy presentation, and that's fine. It's boring, but it's fine. It functions. But once you get a couple of them on screen, particularly if you fail a stealth section, you are fucked. And it happens a lot in this game because its difficulty is really broken.
I had a hallway yesterday when I was playing where guys came out of vents in the walls.
Yeah, it's the one with the white background, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
And then there were dudes coming from the white background. So I would hold back and get the one dude, and every single time, I got stuck here really bad. Every single time, the enemy I was facing would grab me and launch me further into the hallway so that more dudes come into the hallway.
Yep.
So then you have at least two dudes to fight, if not three. So it's so intentional on the game developers somewhere somehow to have more than one-on-one fights.
Yes.
And it's so annoying because that's the game's weakest point, I think.
Absolutely.
The combat is so bad, it's not made for that, but they kept intentionally making you do it.
Yep. Yeah, so the enemies, if they're not attacking, are usually doing an idle stutter animation, or they are grabbing you and trying to shove their tentacles down your eyeballs, or they'll grab you and then spin around and throw you, in a direction. Yeah, the melee combat is just really grinding. After a certain amount of time, especially when you hit a couple of mini-bosses, or I wouldn't even call them mini-bosses, just more aggressive enemies, you get really used to it to the point where, even though it takes longer, I'll just be it's heavy attack, they fall down, I stomp on them, they get back up, heavy attack, they fall down, I stomp on, and it's it takes so long. They are so simultaneously melee spongy and bullet spongy for the most part, that the enemies take forever to finish combat sections. On my my second playthrough on a higher difficulty, despite the fact that I had just played the game, so I basically knew where all the enemy spawns were and whatnot, I was trying to speed through it as fast as I could and avoid whatever enemies I was able to avoid, other than for the sake of getting loot. And it's really hard to chew through quickly. You have to take the gameplay not slowly, but pretty methodically.
I've had that on freaking normal difficulty.
And that's the one of the annoying parts of it. The other annoying part of the melee and general gameplay is the amount of quick time events. There are, like I said, there's sometimes when you're in combat, an enemy will take their face tentacles and they'll shove them in your eye and your mouth, and then you have to spam the Y button, or what would that be? Triangle on PlayStation, with no rhythm to it or amount of hits. You just have to spam it and then you shove them off you. Sometimes you will also hit the foreskin monster, which is an enemy type that like plants itself on the ground. It looks like a big dick. I don't care. Correction, it looks like the big dick from The Boys. It has a skull on top of a foreskin, and then it shoots at you, it bites into your shoulder, and you have to like stab it with your knife. And it's the same problem where there's no rhythm to how the QuickTime event works, and you always take damage. Yep. You can't avoid them, and it will pull you into a room away from where you want it to go. And then it might potentially drag you into other enemies. And the biggest thing that I discovered on my New Game Plus playthrough, after almost 20 hours already, you can turn off the QuickTime events. In the menu, if you go into the accessibility options, something I do want to give this game credit for, it does have a lot of really good accessibility options. You can turn off QuickTime events, you can make the dodging even easier if that's a problem, like changing like the repetitive motion stuff for a controller. Really good options to have. And you can just turn it off. It'll still do the animations, which is fucking obnoxious as shit, but like it won't then make you get angry by spamming buttons. You just then have to wait 5 seconds for the animation to be over. It'll automatically get the enemy off of you. Really frustrating shit on that front, because that is like turn of the 2010s technology there. The QuickTime events have no rhythm. There's no set button count to it. It's just you do it just and then it's over. And you're lucky if you can get out of an enemy's grip without taking damage. There's no way to prevent it. Most of the time, there's no rhyme or reason, and that's bullshit. And that's most of the gameplay mechanics funnel back to bullshit. Not piss poor or broken, but like kind of intentionally bullshitty. Movement is my other biggest gripe with this game. You are slow as dirt. Even when you are holding the left bumper to sprint, you are like a moderate jog. I'm fat and I can run faster than this guy. You'll be in the middle of a combat arena and he just like slightly picks up his feet to scamper through it. It's fucking horrible. There are shimmy tunnels all over this game, which are clearly there to hide loading screens, which used to be a cute little, I don't know, when open world games did that, you're like, oh, I know they're hiding a loading screen, but I think it's cool. Like, fucking Fallen Order does that, but there's only a couple of them. It's when you go into a big building and they're like 2 seconds long. Versus this game, they're everywhere.
Very long.
Everywhere. All the stealth sections, trust me, you haven't seen the half of it, bucko. The second half of the game has even more of them. You are crawling through areas, you have to climb through vents, which take the same amount of time. They have the same animation every time. There's no way to back out of it. There's no way to make it go faster or to skip it. You just have to fucking chew through it.
Vents had a pattern, and I've been waiting to talk about it because you complained about it. You could always tell when there was going to be a jump scare because at the end of the length that you're crawling through, it would look different. It would be like a clear vent at the end instead of like a solid wall. So it's like, oh, that's going to be a jump scare. And
boogie. Yeah, every fucking time.
Yeah.
I want to say something just because this has bothered me with any game that has a vent crawling system, particularly the Batman Arkham games. I have never played a game in my 15 years of playing video games where they actually put a fucking jump scare in the vents. Vents are only there to build suspicion and suspense, but there's no real gameplay jump scare. Like you said, there's a little in the distance, you'll see some feet scamper around, which this game does a lot of, like, wow, look, there's something in the distance. No point. Despite the fact that you are crawling through shit-infested, like, biofungus tunnels in this game, there are no enemies in the tunnels, there are no jump scares, and it seems to only be a technological problem, because, like I said, Batman Arkham games have had, like, vent problems forever. They're annoying, but, you know, even those are, like, fluid, at least. There's never any enemies in those, and despite the fact that every single time I crawl through, I'm like, oh, I bet it's around this corner, there's never anything. And that was the thing with this game that made me just have none of the scares affected me in the second half, because once I got through the first few like long tunnel sequences, I was like, why do I even have headphones on? Like, this is, I'm not going to be able to tell. And that's the thing, is because Dead Space is phenomenal at doing sound and light-based jump scares. They will actually make them avoidable, detectable scares. If you've played the game, or if you're towards the end of it, you'll know, based on where the smoke is or where previous enemies are, they'll actually crawl around the fucking vents in the Ishimura to go behind you and do all sorts of stuff. It's real in-gameplay mechanics that the enemies are doing, even though they're clunky and especially now have aged a little bit. This game, the Callisto Protocol, they just spawn. There is no pattern. There is no giveaway. You'll hear scamper. 4 seconds later, wow, it's the hole in the wall that every time there's that hole in the wall, an enemy pops through it. Holy shit, an enemy popped through. No fucking shit. And it's the most infuriating thing, because again, it's trying to pass itself off as a spiritual successor to Dead Space, whereas the Dead Space first game, 15 years ago, could nail this in terms of not bullshitting you with scares. They would be jump scares, and they would be, the monster pops out of the vent and goes, oh, wooga wooga, which bothers the fuck out of me. But like, those guys, you know it's coming because you've gotten used to the patterns of the game. This has got nothing to it, and it drove me up a wall. Stealth sections. The second half of the game has a lot more stealth than the first half. There's a couple of spots in the first half of the game where it'll tell you should crouch, because usually there's like an enemy robot that you can't kill that will just walk around trying to find prisoners. Those are annoying, and they are basically instant kill machines. Even on the lower difficulties, you can't dodge it. Like, you have to be behind it or shoot it before it sees you. That's it. And on higher difficulties, you can't kill them. So fuck that shit. There are stealth sections later in the game when you get to the underground, and this is where my time with the game simultaneously got much better and much worse. The stealth is fucking busted to hell, like more than the melee combat. The stealth, there is no. So I don't play stealth games exclusively, but like, I like stealth games, even bad stealth games like most of the Assassin's Creed games. You have like either sound or sight lines is how most games function off of this. The enemies in the underground are different enemy types, which is cool. They look different, they're presented differently, even though they look basically just like clickers from The Last of Us. You will get a lot of a lot of Last of Us vibes towards the second half of the game. They look more fungusy, they're more bony and like tall and whatever. They're blind, and you can't. The game will tell you by smarmy little graffiti written in blood, don't make sounds, and it's like, okay, cool. It just means crouch. That's it. They can't see you, and you can almost touch them and they won't do anything. The only way that it will, like, this drove me so crazy when I finally figured out. Another thing I realized way too late. You can't, when you do the kill animation, like a stealth kill, you come up behind the fucker. It's like, hit the A button to stab it, and you jump upwards. And you throw the fucker on the ground, and it's apparently silent. Cool. No, it's immersion breaking. It's the loudest stealth kill I've ever heard in my life. It is dramatic and grungy, and it's like you stab in the knee, and then the back of the head, and then you stab in the front of the head, and you twist it around. It's violent as hell, which is cool because it looks good. And none of the enemies hear it because it's a stealth kill. And it also throws the camera all around the room, which drives me up a wall, because then you can't keep track of where the other enemies are for a couple of seconds, so they could just pop up behind you because they kind of shamble around with no rhyme or reason. So on the one hand, I was paranoid at first when playing the game because I was really trying to be like, maybe I'm not playing it right, maybe the game, it just not everything works great, but like, okay, oh, cool, big stealth section, I wonder how this works. And I was like, oh my god, I made so much noise, I'm gonna die. Nothing. I did it again. And you can stomp on the enemies to break their bodies, take their ammunition, and it doesn't make any sound, apparently. So there was freedom in that. There was a sense of, fuck it, we ball, which was cool, because then my stress levels went way down. But then almost all frighteningness that the game had completely wore off. It's creepy because there's a bunch of shambling corpse monsters bumping around, but also it's fucking silly because you can rip them limb from limb and none of them notice. The stealth is so bad. And it takes up, it's like 2 to 3 chapters of the game are almost entirely stealth based. The combat in those sections is also busted because if you are detected somehow, if you're an idiot, then just all the enemies in the area come after you, and you can't fix it. You can't run away because they hear you, but like there's no way to escape combat because they don't see you.
Also, there's no way to run.
That too. Your running is just low as dirt. Like there's no way to escape it. So you just have to die. Either you have to fight all of them or you have to die. Both are doable. Whatever. And it makes for a really grueling experience. There are boss battles later in the game. There is like a mini boss which you'll encounter 2 or 3 times, and then there's the final boss of the game who has 2 phases. They're crap. The mini boss is at least bearable. It is mostly a shooting gallery, and then you have to just do a bunch of dodging, and in the areas where you do said boss battle, you have to just run around trying to find any ammunition you can while avoiding the thing, because it'll just swing at you from behind you and you can barely see it and you die instantly. Horrible. It's cool because it's a 2-headed monster, which is pretty cool. There's gnarly bits where you fight it and then you knock it to its knees, you beat the shit out of it. It gets back up and it rips off like one of the bodies. It's just really cool to watch because it's like, nah, get off me, ew. And then it goes feral and whatever. It feels like a Titan battle from Arkham Asylum, kind of, not in its gameplay mechanics, but like vibes. And then the final boss of the game is. It's just guns. It's just guns. You just shoot it and you run away and you shoot it some more and then you shoot it some more and then the game's over. The final boss nearly killed me on my first playthrough. I took a full day to beat it because it's so broken. You have to revert back to previous saves and chew through all credits you have to get ammunition because otherwise you just can't. The final boss is absolutely dog shit. While the rest of the game has been training you for its crappy rhythm-based combat and its very crappy shooting mechanics, then the final boss is just shoot it until it dies. And it's so counterintuitive from the earlier parts of the game. The thing I've been kind of avoiding is simultaneously the best and worst part of the game because they avoid it so much. The grip is a very cool tool. It's basically like it's a glove. It's a little gauntlet thingy. It's the Force, basically. You can grab enemies, throw them. The primary use for the player is to throw enemies into a meat grinder, which is fun as shit. It's very.
I'm pretty sure I came up to a stealth section where there were like 6 enemies, and I just whooped them all into the meat grinder.
Wait,
and that's what
it's when so you go down a ladder and then you turn right to the platform, and then they're in a smoke, and then there's like a central pillar, right? Yeah, that one fucked me up so bad the first few times, and then
I just whooped them all.
That was the part that was hard. I was like low on health and ammo, so you have to whoop them.
There was also a platform that killed me a couple of times because you have to ride it across like a bridge, and it was so slow, and there were like 3 or 4 enemies at the end of the bridge that just shot me until I was dead, and I just had to whoop them into the void underneath the bridge.
Yes, sir.
Instead of shooting at them.
Mm-hmm. The grip unit is a really cool idea that when you use it, I think works well. It's pretty straightforward. It doesn't take that long. Like, you just need to be vaguely aimed at the right person. You aim down sights and then you press the A button. It pulls the enemy into the air. You hold them like you're force choking them, and then you can either pull them closer to melee hit them, or you can throw them. That's basically it, but those are arguably the best parts of the gameplay sections, are when the grip unit is active, because you can always tell. You walk into a big room and there's a bunch of little spinny things around, and you go, oh, this is the part where I get to throw shit. It's
worse than that. It's like every single hallway has spikes on the walls for no reason.
Because, yes, there are a lot of, they get even more prevalent later on. There's a bunch of just wall sections with spikes, and it's like, it's telling you to just throw shit.
Yeah. But I got stuck again because there was like a room with 3 bad guys and they wouldn't back off enough for me to fight them with melee. So it's like, fine, I'll just throw all 3 of you on top of each other onto the spikes on the wall.
And it's extremely easy to spam, despite the fact that there is a skill tree for all of your stuff, sort of, kind of. For the grip unit, it gets the like amount of time you can hold someone or something is extended. You can throw them further and you can throw them faster. So if you throw them faster, you do more damage, or you can just obliterate them. I thought all of that was fine, but even right from the beginning, yeah, you can just take an enemy, you can be like right in front of them and just go flick, and they're just on the wall and dead. And it's like, the game has no balance between its really hard, broken melee mechanics and its fine shooting, and its really, really broken force powers. And it's just very frustrating because the force powers are the really, really fun part of the game that I thought were really cool. There are not enough sections where it's a big arena and it's like, wow, there's a propeller over there. I wonder what that's for. It's for throwing shit into. And that's really fun. And that's what they tried to sell the game on, was the meat grinder. There's not enough of it. When it does happen, it's really cool. There's a bunch of propellers or some engine components or whatever bullshit excuse there is for a big spinny thing with spikes on it, and that's fine. It's so easy to spam, and then the section's over, and then the fun's gone, and that it doesn't want you to have the fun because it takes it away so quickly, and it's useless in boss battles, like entirely. So fuck that. Very frustrating.
You should be able to throw the meat grinder at the boss.
That would be fun. So yeah, the gameplay on the whole is slow, not methodical, not meticulous, and sloppy. The gunplay is actually okay. I enjoy it, partially because the aesthetic of it makes me happy. I like the 3D printed gun shit. I'm a nerd. I don't care. Eventually you get basically a handgun, and then there's a couple of weapon schematics you can pick up in side areas that are basically extensions for the one gun, which I like. That weird, it's a vibe thing, where like you can go into your submenu and change out the handgun to be like a hand shotgun, and then you can change it out to be like a hand it's not the hand cannon, that's just the hand gun, but like you can change it out and it's like a big boom, I like that. It's okay. All of them are usable. You also can get further weapon upgrades to get an assault rifle, a riot gun, which is basically just like a hip-fired shotgun, and one other gun I don't remember. They're all usable. I mostly played my first playthrough with the riot gun, and then I would switch the hand cannon to be the skunk gun, which is like the hand shotgun. On my second playthrough, I was trying to actually upgrade all my shit, so I was trying to switch back and forth with the it's like the tactical pistol or whatever. It's the gun go boom and the assault rifle. They're fine. None of them are terribly more useful than the others. They all have alt fire modes, so after a certain amount of upgrades, you can, when you aim down sights, you can hit like a bumper and it'll be a big explosive round or something like that. And those are all fine. They help break up the monotony of the shooting. The biggest problem with the shooting is the fact that there is no rhyme or reason on how you kill enemies. Dead Space is really notorious for its, you need to shoot the limbs, because the limbs are the dangerous parts and the limbs are the things that will like actually go at you. The enemies can exist with just their limbs, which is fucking gross and disturbing. But this game, just, you have to do enough collective damage to the enemy. And while that would have been fine in basically any other game, a game in direct conversation with Dead Space, it's unacceptably simple. If you shoot the head off of them, some enemies will stop spitting vomit at you, and that's about it. Like, the enemies all can just sense where you are without their head, without their eyes. They can hear you all the time. You can shoot limbs off, and they will have different attack patterns. And that's basically it. About halfway through the game as well, the enemies have an evolved form where they get little tentacle squid monsters, and then if you don't kill the enemy fast enough, it'll transform and become big and bony and harder to kill. That, aesthetically speaking, reminded me exclusively of one thing, and it is the Flood in Halo Force multiplayer infection mode. I don't know why, but it's the same weird orangey flesh look. I don't know where that came from, but it was the only thing I could think of, and I hated that part of the game, because then almost every single enemy then has a timer on it that you just need to very aggressively kill it, and most of the time you still can't do it. The guns are all cool looking. You go to the upgrade tree, basically, is a 3D printer module in this prison complex, which doesn't entirely make sense why it would exist, but whatever. You can upgrade your baton, so your cop baton with more damage, or electric powers, or a bigger swing, or a longer reach, whatever. They're all fine. The guns you can upgrade with bigger magazines, better handling, alt-fire modes, like I said. And you can buy ammunition for it. It's really simple, and I'm fine with it. It does have a similar inventory management system as with Dead Space or Resident Evil are another direct comparison. The problem with that being none of your shit stacks. So you have maybe 6 inventory slots for pickups. You pick up ammunition, and ammunition only stacks up to a certain amount, very low for each
5,
gun.
I think.
It depends on each gun. Some of them are 4, some are 5, some are 10, and that's it. So the ammo takes up really precious area in your inventory. It's not worth very much, but you always need it, even on the easier difficulties. You should just be shooting shit more than you should try fighting shit. But the problem with that is you need other random parts. There's like energy converters or random scrap shit that you can sell. As the game goes on, it gets higher in value. You can pick out part like CPUs off the robots, and then you can sell them back to the prison so you can get more credits. The gameplay loop of like scavenging for parts and then selling them I thought was fine. It's serviceable. I appreciate that there's only a couple of types of parts you can get. It doesn't overly complicate things. Like fantasy RPGs do this a lot, where it's like you have 30,000 things you could pick up, but they all equate to 2 or 3 credits of whatever monetary system you have. Whereas this one's like you can sell your grip glove like refill units for energy, because if you don't use the grip glove that much, you won't need those. You can sell energy converters like the CPU parts, and that's about it. Like it's like 5 things you can collect, but they don't stack on top of each other, so you need to use your entire inventory for shit, and you have to constantly be selling things.
I had a problem with the loot being randomly generated. So that hallway that I got stuck in, the room before it had a bunch of stuff laying around, and I was really excited the first time because I found like the super duper moneymaker thing that sells for a lot of money, and then I died and realized that all the loot changed. It went from like gun ammo to like just health pickups. It was like it got less and less helpful the more I died.
Yep.
It was terrible.
I think part of that is in the intentional like difficulty what's the term I'm looking for? Like ramp up the game is vaguely trying to go for. But yeah, the RNG part of it is really fucking annoying. Once you finally get the hang of the combat and you basically stop dying outside of really stupid scenarios, which is most of the way through the game, or on repeat playthrough, it doesn't bother you too much. And I don't hate, like, not all of a game has to be like specifically set out parts, but it varies so much where you could be getting a health gel pickup, which is like a quarter of your health bar. It's almost nothing. Or yeah, you could be getting like the pristine energy converter for 500 credits. It's just randomly sitting there in someone's locker. And I like the simplicity. There's only a certain amount of pickups. They're just kind of there, and you get one pickup from killing an enemy and then breaking their body. I like the rhythm of that. That was part of the game I was able to actually jive with. But the fact that it is RNG means that it's really hard to plan ahead if you keep dying. You have to willpower through this game, and that was my biggest problem, but also simultaneously the reason why I finished it.
It's the Dark Souls of Dead Space?
No, because Dark Souls is willpower and smarts.
Right.
Even though it is mostly willpower because it is fucking miserable, you can still plan things. This game, you have to just do it and 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 do it. Oh, you did it! And like just hope for the best. Because of the way that the game is set up, there are you can't revisit chapters after the game is over. You just have to start a new save file or go to New Game Plus and change the difficulty, which makes sense for the type of gameplay it's going for. It is just annoying when you're trying to get the audio files. The only collectibles in the game outside of like your loot pickups are just audio files from people. You can walk up to a corpse and just rip their fucking memory out, which is kind of cool. those are the only things. There's maybe 30 or 40 of them in total. They're scattered around. They're fine. I don't hate them, but they are really low quality in comparison to Dead Space's audio logs, which are some of the best audio logs in gaming, next to like fucking the original BioShock ones. Some of the earliest and best audio logs we've ever had. Audio logs have become the laziest thing in gaming right now, and I don't like that because it's my favorite type of pickup. They're good for lore dumping in ways that are slightly more organic. You should be able to play them while you're playing the game, and so on. But in this game, you have to go into the menu, select it, it'll start playing, and then like they're fine. They're produced like okay. They're little vocal bits, but some review I was listening to mentioned this. Almost all of them are post-outbreak, which doesn't help with the world building of understanding what this place is supposed to be like when it's not falling apart. So
you want to know what some of the worst audio files are?
What?
Halo Infinite.
Shut up. Don't remind me, okay? Don't remind me. Don't remind me. Fuck you. Making my mood worse. It's just really annoying because some of them are okay. The ones about the evil doctor lady and the management of the prison are fine. They make more sense. But the ones that are just random guard. Oh, I tried to close the gate, but we couldn't close the gate, and now I'm dying. Ah! And like, that's it. And it's just a bunch of those. And it doesn't help expand the world building at all. I have all of them because I'm cool like that. But it means you can't revisit levels to go get more of them. And each level like kind of locks you out of backtracking every 15 to 20% of the level's completion. It just hits you with a stone wall of you're stuck here now. On top of that, the save file system is the worst thing I've used in a long time. The game automatically saves every time you go through a big corridor or a combat area or whatever, which is fine. The problem is, if you want to set manual saves, the thing you do in games like this with Dead Space or Dark Souls, something like that, you manually save, you fuck around, you go back to your manual save, and you plan. You can't do that with this game because if you manually save, it only physically saves your geographical location on the map, but not any progress you've made up until that point. So if you say you're at the 20% marker of a level, and then you get a bunch of cool loot, and then you stop right before a save point, but you manually save it, it will, when you boot the game back up, you will be in that same spot, but none of that loot you picked up will be in your inventory. It was the most infuriating part that I had was after my first game session. It was almost 8 hours straight. I was straight balling, even though this thing fucking sucked. And I saved in the least convenient spot ever. And I had to keep going through the same passages time and time again because I kept dying, but I didn't want to backpedal to go get the loot. So I would get the loot, go against an enemy, and I kept fucking dying. So I was playing the same like 20 minutes, like 10 times. And it was infuriating. So just don't even bother making manual saves, just at all. The save system is completely broken. What else we got? General presentation is okay. It's fine.
It looks really good.
I'll get to that.
Oh.
So the user interface and the internal HUD are okay. They're Dead Space ripoffs. The gun has the ammo counter on it. Your health is just displayed on the back of your neck. Whatever.
Did the main menu work for you?
Sometimes. I was going to get to that under the technical issues I had. The main menu is just like a looping animation of spooky hospital with amputated legs on carts and shit. Like, whatever. It's fine.
Every single time I've pulled the game up, I can hear it moving the selector around.
But the music is not playing and nothing else plays. It's just like the...
No. I can't see the bar.
Really?
I can't see what I'm selecting.
Huh.
I've almost started a new game several times because I think that's the assumption when you pull up the game.
Yeah.
So I've never known if I have to move up to continue a game or what. Like,
Weird.
I cannot see what my...
That's really weird.
is.
So my main menu problem was, one, my first few times it load up, it would take forever and it would basically freeze. My problem was I could start my save file or whatever, and none of the audio would be playing, which is more of a technical issue than anything else. But I could, I'd hit my Xbox's guide button, and I could hear the menus whooshing of my Xbox. So, like, I knew my headphones were working, everything was plugged in right. The game just wasn't exporting its audio to my audio output. So I had to reboot the game multiple times sometimes to get the audio running. And this was especially in the first half when I was actually trying to engage with the game's audio and jump scares to try to let it fool me. It was really frustrating a couple of times.
Anyway, back to UI.
The UI is fine. Other than that, like I said, there's a lot of options on the actual menus. It does allow you to make a lot of saves, and something I noticed on my New Game Plus game playthrough is you can go back to the same spot you are and not be on New Game Plus, which I don't know why you would ever want to do it, but I just notice it because it'll basically have like two save files right next to each other with the same time, like the same timestamp and the same location and the same like objective, but just one isn't New Game Plus. I don't know why you'd ever want to do that, but I'm assuming there's some logic there I just don't know about because I'm not like that. I'm not that special. There's a lot of options. The HUD elements can all be modified. There's really good color blindness options. All of that stuff is really high effort, which I think just the standard for games has been raised a lot on that front, particularly with Xbox and PlayStation putting a lot of their games on PC, and I think that's really good and cool, and I appreciate it, even though I don't usually use most of those settings. Except you can't change controller mapping on this game, like at all. You can change stick inversion, and you can change it to be lefty option, which no left-handed person, meaning me, and Jacob, has ever wanted to move with the right stick. No one wants to do that.
That'd be weird.
Yeah, it's backward. Like, I've never seen anyone actually want to use the lefty option in a game. And you can't change any of the other controller mapping. Despite the fact that like Xbox Series consoles are like really famous for like having really good controller mapping, this game doesn't let you do shit. So it's unintuitive and backwards control scheme, like smashing the Y button for stuff. Like you're stuck with it. There's no choice. It's fucking weird. The score is okay. It's very horror movie jump scare heavy in terms of its audio, not because like it's paired well with each individual scare being built up to. It's more like the game randomly plays spooky sounds every 4 seconds on loop, so you're always on edge. And it's not miserable to listen to, but it is boring because it just put me in my butthole's clenched, but my butthole is clenched, but I'm bored at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm I'm on edge, but I'm not like looking for anything. So that was kind of disappointing. Dead Space, again, has one of the best horror movie like OSTs ever. It's really disappointing. The main theme for this game is fucking boring, which just sucks.
And grueling.
Yes.
It just grinds you down.
It repeats itself a lot. Graphically, though, this shit looks hot. Mm-hmm. I don't like its visual style is my big thing, is because the world building and the scares are sloppy. I think its art style is also sloppy. There are parts of it that I like. I like some of the creature designs. I like some of the guns and the 3D printer stuff. I don't mind the main armor that the game is kind of sold with. I like the look of the vehicles, but it's really a hodgepodge of stuff, and that bugs me because I mostly like sci-fi stuff. Incoherent world building really drives me up a wall, and this looks like everything and nothing. The iconography isn't here. It's evoking some other games and some movies, but it doesn't have enough to actually stand on its own, and that is just not good. The graphics, like the quality of the skins and of the actual like texture mapping is really, really good. I'm pretty impressed with the amount of like fidelity on the performances, just despite the fact that it's from what my big saving grace of this thing is they're a really small developer. This was like barely a AAA game by its budget. It was a very small team in comparison to what you'd think they were kind of selling it on. So I feel like they really made the best of it, graphically speaking, that they could. The blood effects are really impressive. The game is sold on being a meat grinder, and the blood sometimes is really silly, but for the most part, if you just beat an enemy to death and then you stomp on their corpse and you like rip it to shreds, the blood splatter effects are pretty fucking good looking, and I think that's pretty cool. The lighting engine was solid. I think that was one of the things that I thought was the most impressive during some of its not stealth, but like quieter segments towards the later half of the game. When you're starting to go underground, there's a lot of backlit smoke and stuff like that. And I do think, even though the way it's set up is very tropey and very, wow, look, backlit smoke, I bet a creepy crawly's gonna, creepy crawly popped out. Like, it's a lot of that. I do think like the fidelity of it is really impressive. The smoke effects were fantastic. I could never tell when it was like smoke blob. You know, like a lot of games have difficulty with particle effects, where it's like it's a blob or it sticks to things. This just felt really good at managing its different like particle effects really, really well.
I have 2 points. The spikes on the walls react to the bodies really, really well.
Yes.
And then I'd say the only thing I didn't like in the visuals was there were some pretty shitty fire effects.
Yeah. I was going to contrast that with the smoke effects, because the fire is pretty meh.
Oh, it's bad.
It's not horrible in some areas. Some of it's pretty rough, but I think, especially by comparison with the lighting engine, is the way that they do fires are pretty not good.
It looks like 2D fire.
Yeah. I think some of that is because of the way they set up the things that are on fire to be
trying to hide it.
the edge of the battle arena type shit. Like, very, when the game wants to limit where you're going, and they'll put the hard wall behind the flame type shit. So it doesn't bother me, but it definitely was the least good looking part of the game. Other tech-wise stuff, the sounds are all very good. They are repetitive. The OST is repetitive, but the fidelity was very good. I was pretty impressed. When I wasn't having sound technical problems with the thing fucking loading, the actual crunchy noises are really good. Each individual enemy has different crunchy noises, and they have different crunchy noises based on the different stages, the way you hit them. When you have different upgrades to your baton, it makes different crunchy beat-up noises. And that was all pretty cool. The different types of meat grinders make different grindy noises, and the enemies have different types of screeches and stuff. There's no coherence as to why each one sounds the way that it does. All the enemies look different from each other, and that's really fucking annoying. But like, the fidelity of the recording of the audio quality, I would compare it to Halo 4. Whereas I would defend a lot of the art style choices from, the very contentious Halo 4's art style. A lot of that stuff I will defend on how good it looks. Some of it I completely understand why people didn't like, but the quality of the audio that they put into that fucker was insane. It wasn't as iconic. Some of, the Needler didn't sound like the Needler. Stuff like that. Entirely valid complaints, because especially the original Halos were running on a lot of stock sound effects that they just kind of fucked with. And that's fine. But like, the quality of the recording and how well they play in the environment was really, really high. And that is definitely here. It's just limited by its variety. So the game...
Did you leave your windows down?
No.
Okay.
The game launched a little buggy, from what I could tell. Actually, wait, no. Roll back. On my New Game Plus, I've had 3 crashes. I had no crashing on my first playthrough. It froze a bit during the main menu trying to load up save files, but on my New Game Plus, for some fucking reason, it's crashed 3 times and sent me back to the Xbox homepage. No rhyme or reason, not too many enemies on screen, or the cutscene didn't load. I don't know what the fuck happened. It just did it. It originally launched in a much buggier state. Apparently had a really big day one patch that fixed a lot of its tech issues. I think it was about a month after launch, it released New Game Plus mode. So that was not a launch thing. It was free for everyone, which is something. So with like any other New Game Plus, means you finish the game, you can then go, I want to bump up the difficulty, but load in with all the shit that I had at the end of my last playthrough. So you can grind out more upgrades, finish the upgrade tree, stuff like that. It's fine on that front. I can speed through the cutscenes because I can skip all of them. The shimmy tunnels I have no tension for anymore, so like I am speeding through it. I am in the last like levels. I'm basically done with the New Game Plus. So that's fine. It has a couple of skin DLCs, which I think is stupid. They don't look very good to my taste. I don't know why they exist. There was one that was like a day one launch bundle for no extra money. It was like 2 skins. There are Dead Space skins, which are valid. I'll say that.
Apparently, Dead Space skins are a very popular thing.
Apparently so. I didn't realize that. But yeah,
you can find YouTube videos of honest-to-goodness research about this.
Fortnite has Dead Space skins.
Of course Fortnite has skins.
But it's Fortnite. It's for children, and Dead Space is traumatizing. So
there's like a freaking Tiger Woods 2001 game that has Dead Space skins.
Yeah,
like, it's ridiculous.
It's very weird. And then there are 2 expansions that are currently out, and there's a 3rd one on the way. The Season Pass gives you access to all of it. The Season Pass is $30. It is, like I said, New Game Plus. There is the Contagion mode, which is effectively New Game Plus, New Game Plus, New Game Plus. So it's hardcore. It's hard difficulty, hardcore mode, and New Game Plus. But there's 15 more death animations, which is cool because the death animations in this game are really gnarly. They get repetitive, but the goopy men shove their fingers in all your orifices and they rip your head off and like all sorts of cool stuff. But there's more of those, which I don't know why you would paywall. Weird. But Contagion mode, it means it reverts back. It's kind of like which skull is it? It's a Halo skull. If you die, you go back to the beginning of the chapter. So fair. It's an additional difficulty modifier on top of just being the hardest of the hardest of the hard with no ammo. So that's locked behind a paywall, which is cringe. There's Riot mode, which is pretty neat. I haven't checked it out yet. I just bought the Season Pass today. It's basically like any game's Horde mode. So like Horde mode from Gears of War or Firefight from Halo 3 ODST. It's just arenas with a butt ton of enemies. You kill as many as possible before you die. That's fine. It shouldn't have been paywalled. That was released about 2 months after launch, and right now we are gearing up for the story DLC because this game ends on a wrap-up and then a cheap cliffhanger. So the story is not complete, and they are locking the only story DLC behind a paywall for another like $10. It seems to be just another chapter, so it's another 12% of the game. Because the game, I won't spoil the whole thing for it, but it ends and it's like, oh no, it's the end of the game, and then it's like, oh no, he's still alive, jump scare, and then the game ends, and it's like, it's really anticlimactic because it undercuts its own ending. It feels really rushed to its ending, but at least the real ending feels like, okay, that's fine, whatever. And then it just has this little like epilogue shit at the end that's like, aha, story teaser, and that's really bad. I did buy it for half off the original Season Pass price because I was really curious about the Riot and Contagion mode because I'm kind of on a roll right now with my amount of New Game Plus. So I'm going to try to chew through that as quickly as I can. I bought it for half off. So I bought the Season Pass for $15, which seems to be a decent value, I will say. For 2 additional story modes and then a DLC, that's okay. But I think those not being included in the game at launch is really, really bad. So on top of the game really being originally planned as a spin-off of another game, and then having all of those connections cut, it was launched incomplete. Not stupidly buggy, but without all of its intended parts, because they were ready to go right after launch to just be sold. So clearly it was intended to be launched with New Game Plus, Hardcore mode, Contagion mode, Riot mode, and some skins, and then the publisher just chopped it up into little bits and then sold it back to me. And that's fucking cringe. In total, I spent about 15 hours on my first playthrough. I am at about 15 hours on my second playthrough. I am being more thorough because I wanted to get all the rest of the audio collectibles, which I have gotten, and I am skipping cutscenes, so that doesn't count as time put in.
That's a lot.
It's bad, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It's not even offensive. It's just disappointing. It's stinky. Like the sewage level, where you climb in the poop tunnels.
I'm tired. I want to go home.
I want to go home and play more.
Wow.
I tried to condense that too. I wasn't even that rambly. There's just a lot.